Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where pharmacists can fill your pet's prescriptions, helping you pamper and protect your pet with pills, peanut butter, toys, and treats. Stop into the store today or visit Safeway.com.
You might want to turn up the AC or get your swamp cooler turned on if you haven't already. This week's gonna get hot. I'm talking highs in the upper 80s by the end of the week. On a related note, anyone have any good recommendations for tubing? Let me know. I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel.
And I'm Bazi Kanani. Coming up, a whistleblower is suing the governor.
Governor Polis' office told him he needed to hand over the information on these unaccompanied minors to the feds.
Immigration compliance with the Trump administration is at the heart of this surprising lawsuit.
Also, the group of walkers in Boulder who were attacked in a firebombing are back and bigger.
And why you don't want to eat these fish in Colorado.
We're really trying to protect people from exposure over their whole lifetime.
It's Monday, June 9th. Here's what's happening in Colorado today.
A whistleblower at the Colorado Labor Department is suing Governor Jared Polis, saying that Polis tried to force him and his agency to break a state law in order to help the Trump administration's deportation effort. CPR Public Affairs Editor Megan Verlee is here to walk us through the allegations. Megan, let's start from the beginning here. What did the Trump administration want from Colorado?
So according to the lawsuit, earlier this spring, the Trump administration sent an order to the state for personal information about people known as sponsors. These are folks with legal responsibility for unaccompanied minors who came across the border without a parent or a guardian. The reason the Trump administration wanted this information, at least the reason it gave the state, was that it said it wanted to check up on these kids, make sure they weren't being exploited or trafficked by their sponsors. But our own reporting suggests that that may not have been their main motivation.
What do you think was the motivation?
Well, last month, reporters from our newsroom obtained an ICE memo that detailed a 4-phase plan for how to handle unaccompanied minors in the U.S. It actually referred to them as targets. And those phases included a series of data gathering efforts. For instance, identifying unaccompanied minors who might have committed a crime in the U.S. or before coming to the U.S. And it sounds a lot like what agents were tasked with looking for is information that might facilitate deportations. The memo did not emphasize finding potential victims of sex trafficking as a main reason for checking in on unaccompanied minors. It did, however, provide guidance on how to properly publicize if agents uncovered a human trafficking operation. I'm not certain that the request the state got was a part of this larger ICE effort, but the timelines match up and the subject matter definitely matches up.
So the Trump administration subpoenaed information about these sponsors from the state. What happened next? How did Governor Polis handle that?
Initially, it sounds like he shot them down. And Colorado law is pretty clear on this point. It limits when officials are allowed to share immigrants' personal identifying information with ICE. Basically, the federal government has to have a court order signed by a judge, and it didn't in this case. The order came from the Department of Homeland Security. Now, something that's kind of wild in all of this is that at the same time the Polis administration was dealing with this order and trying to decide whether or not to comply, state lawmakers were one floor up at the Capitol working on a bill to make that prohibition even stronger. And last month, Polis signed that bill into law, and at just around the same time, that's when he decided to reverse course and comply with this request.
The big question then is, why?
Well, Polis's office told me they thought this situation meets a carve-out in the law for criminal investigations. They said the state has a responsibility to protect youth, and it is very opposed to human trafficking, and so it was okay complying with this effort because it agrees with the goal of trying to keep these kids safe. Now, I will say, I also talked to the bill's sponsors. They do not see it that way at all. They said a criminal investigation should be something like, we think this guy robbed a bank. Can you help us find him? Not an open-ended request for information in order to do checkups. And these sponsors, who are all Democrats, are also very suspicious of the Trump administration's motives. And they are upset that the governor's office did not seem to have that same skepticism.
And all of this we now know about because of this whistleblower lawsuit that was filed.
Yeah, the person filing the lawsuit is named Scott Moss. He's the director of the State Division of Labor Standards and Statistics, which is a pretty high up position. Moss says that after some weeks of back and forth about this order, Governor Polis's office told him he needed to hand over the information on these unaccompanied minors to the feds. And Moss said that this put him and his office in a terrible position. In the words of the lawsuit, they were being directed to commit illegal acts. And he says they have a legal jeopardy here because the way the law is written, state officials who turn over information that they shouldn't can be fined quite a lot of money. So that's why he filed the lawsuit. He basically is asking a judge to step in, say, the federal order doesn't meet state law, state officials should not be complying with it, and the governor's office essentially needs to back off here.
That's CPR editor Megan Verlee.
The group that walks each week in Boulder to call for the release of hostages in Gaza walked again yesterday. It was the first time since members of the group were burned in a firebomb attack. This time was different than all the others, because instead of a couple dozen people, there were thousands. At the front of the crowd, a man with both legs and arms tightly bandaged up from last week's attack. He didn't want to talk. He managed to walk yesterday with two women, one standing each side of his body a few blocks down Pearl Street Mall, where the attack happened last week. Nearly everyone wore a piece of tape or a sticker with the number 611, the number of days since the hostages were first taken in Israel. A man named Tom, who didn't want to give his last name, walked down the mall in a red Run for the Lives t-shirt and glasses. He said he lives nearby in Louisville.
So I've joined a few times in the past. It was very safe until, I think, last week. It's very peaceful, and I think that's what we support. And that's what the U.S. citizens support as well. And that's why we're here. This walk is very non-politic. It's just for, peace and then getting those hostages released. So this crowd just signifies the support that we have here in the U.S. and for the Jewish community, and I think for the hostages. We just want to make sure they go home first, right? The world needs to stand for this because the war's not going to end until then.
Some people were attracted here by the annual Boulder Jewish Festival, which was scheduled long before last weekend's terror attack, and that event merged with the walkers. Law enforcement was everywhere, milling in the crowd, standing guard at side streets, poised at sniper posts on roofs along Pearl Street. Omar Shachar co-leads Run for the Lives groups in Denver and Boulder.
We've been walking since November 23, so it's like 19 months or so. It became also something for us to be in a place that you can speak about it, you can share your thoughts, get some comfort from the group, and at some point it was both. It was the hostages and for your community. And sometimes it's hard to be consistent. Sometimes there are more people that are coming, sometimes less. But this is why we're doing it. The reason it's for the hostages. We want to raise their voice. They cannot speak. They are now in tunnels in Gaza. But something changed with this event last Sunday that also bring the community together in a way that it's inspiring. I feel the warmth of the community. People here, not just from Boulder, from Colorado, and people came from other states as well. People flew in, people drove 15 hours to get here just to show support. And this is amazing to see. This is what will give us the strength to keep walking, keep moving on. Next week won't be like this for sure, but I hope that people will be able to go out and share this voice of bringing people back to their homes and with their hope for better days.
And organizers yesterday said a new Run for the Lives chapter just started in Fort Collins. Do you fish in Chatfield Reservoir or Bar Lake? Those are some of the several popular fishing sites that the state health department recently added warnings to. Warnings that advise people to cut back on how much fish they're eating from. Why? Because some of those waterways have high levels of forever chemicals, substances that are harming the fish and the fish's predators, including us. I talked to Megan Williams from the state health department to learn more. What are forever chemicals, and how exactly do they get into our water?
The term forever chemicals refers to a class of thousands of chemicals, which are called per- and polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAS.
Yeah, that's a big word.
It is a big word, which is why we usually just say PFAS. These chemicals have been used since about 1940. And they're good at repelling oil and water and grease and putting out fuel-based fires. One kind of unique feature of PFAS is that they really don't break down. So when they are released into the environment, they kind of cycle around. So they may have originally gone into soil, but then they kind of moved into groundwater or moved into surface water, moved into rain, into air. So they really kind of just cycle around. They're kind of everywhere.
Then fish absorb it, either through their skin or they eat it. What happens to us when we eat the fish?
The main health risks that we're concerned about are increased cholesterol, effects on the immune system, decreased birth weight for babies that are born to people who have a lot of PFAS in their body, as well as an increased incidence of certain types of cancer.
The word forever is in their names. Does that mean that those lakes will forever have these chemicals?
That's a great question. So what we do know is that if you can remove the source of PFAS near a water body, over time, the level of PFAS in that water body and therefore in the fish, it does go down. So the state has a lot of different actions that we're doing to control PFAS. We have a firefighting foam take-back program. And then folks from our hazardous waste program are working to help clean up existing contaminated sites.
And now, I love fish. It's
Me
one
too.
of my favorite foods. So how much of it do I have to eat to start getting sick or feeling these effects?
It would be very unlikely for you to consume enough fish in, for example, a day to start feeling sick from these things. We're not necessarily concerned about the risk from one specific meal or even an entire month's worth of meals. We're really trying to protect people about from exposure over their whole lifetime.
One thing that I noticed is that this advisory was very much geared to people that were fishing in these lakes. Can you still swim in it?
Yes, definitely. So we're really not concerned about folks, swimming, recreating, paddleboarding, anything else that you're going to do on the water. That's not really our concern. It's really because it builds up to these higher levels in fish tissue.
That's really good news as this hot weather is approaching.
Yeah, definitely.
Megan, thank you so much.
Sure, thank you.
You can find the full list of affected fishing spots on the link in our show notes. Reporting for today's show also came from Rachel Estabrook, Tony Gorman, and Kara Damar.
If you like staying on top of what's happening in our state, make this podcast part of your daily routine. Follow Colorado Today in your podcast app and share it with a friend. I'm Bazi Kanani.
And I'm Arlo Perez Esquivel. This is CPR News.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Credit Union of Colorado. With access to over 30,000 ATMs and a mobile app, they're dedicated to offering the services of a big bank with a heart. Learn more at honestlygood.org.
Support for Colorado Today comes from Safeway, where you can shop online and get easy delivery or free pickup. Get the same prices, deals, and rewards as in-store. Shop the weekly ad, clip deals, and earn points at Safeway.com or in the Safeway app.